Welcome back to Liberty Bytes on the Think Liberty Network. I'm your host, William-Gadsden. You can follow me personally on Twitter at William_Gadsden and follow Think Liberty on Facebook, Twitter, or whatever your favorite social media outlet is. Give us a follow and a like for updates on new episodes and more. So today I want to talk about the idea of intended and unintended consequences. They say that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. This principle is no less true when it comes to government policy. Now, if you've listened to our episodes of Liberty on the Rocks, you've heard me reference Thomas Sowell's point concerning economic policy, that when it comes to government regulation in the market, the intent doesn't matter. Only the outcome matters. Early on in his book, Basic Economics, he uses the example of rental regulations in New York City and San Francisco. And while the original intent of these regulations was to raise the standard of living for the poor in these cities, the results instead were outdated buildings, maintenance not being accomplished, and entire residential areas of the city being vacated and condemned. In the end, the result was more cost to the state, i.e. the taxpayer, and more homelessness. That the local government had originally set out to help the poor didn't matter. Only the end results do. The poor were less well off and even more homelessness as a direct result of these well-intended but poorly thought-out policies. This exact same concept can be seen in a multitude of domestic, economic, and foreign policies across the country and around the world. Take, for example, Britain's relatively recent ban on firearms and their subsequent and current drive for knife control, or Germany's allowance for the massive influx of migrants from the Third World. Both events, while well-intentioned, have resulted in a huge rise in violent crime, break-ins, and sexual assault, not to mention the enormous rise in cost to the government, again, the taxpayer. But let's get back to some of these issues that are closer to home. One perfect example of this is the recent push in Florida and several other states to raise the minimum age for buying any kind of firearm to 21, or the multitude of states that include exorbitant fees or regulations on gun ownership and call it, quote, gun control. While these seem like practical, common sense gun regulations, look at who is most in need of firearms and who these types of regulations will hurt first. The answer is the poor and the defenseless. Who lives in high crime areas? Poor, often minority members. Who are you stopping by including extra fees and costs of owning a firearm? The poor, the destitute, the people that you claim to be helping, to be representing. As far as the minimum age for owning firearms being raised to 21, you're talking about young single mothers and college students being deprived of their right to defend themselves. That is the real crime here. The same people that the left claim to care about, to help, are instead the first that are hurt by their policies. The same can be said for minimum wage, welfare benefits, and a whole host of other policies across the country. So how do we address this? We start by looking deeper into these policies, particularly the results of them. We judge harshly, based on empirical, statistical evidence. We demand from our politicians clearly defined goals before the bill is even written, and demand that full accountability is kept between the government and the people while it is being written and being voted on. After it's passed, we continue to keep a close watch on what changes are seen and what the law was made to change. If the law doesn't meet the goals that were set out, demand that it is repealed. The problem with all of this, of course, is that it requires work. It takes effort. And for the most part, Americans can't be bothered to put in that kind of work, that kind of effort. Well, that's just the way it's always been. Or, what good can I do? What change can I make? Those kinds of responses are no longer acceptable. We are way too far down the road of government intervention in the lives of the individuals to become complacent, to let our government continue to intercede on what it means to be a free American. It's up to you to make your voice heard, to insist that change takes place for the better, for the individual. I hope you'll join in with us next time and take that first step towards making that change happen. It all starts with becoming more liberty-centered with us. I'm William-Gadsden with Think Liberty.